chief sort of mover of this is really UNESCO. As many of you know, UNESCO has created, not just here in India but across the world, a huge amount of understanding of cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, and of course built heritage. Today in India, I think, Junie, we have 54 heritage UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India, and then deemed to be 2 more in September. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, we're the smallest number of World Heritage Sites in this country. We need to do more. It's not because of them. It's because in every state government and district government and people involved, they have to go out, fill out those forms, make that presentation that will give us the World Heritage order. Junie and UNESCO has been the knowledge partners of the G20 Cultural Summit, and we're going to hear from her a little bit about what has transpired over the past few cultural track summits and the most recent World Culture Ministers Summit that happened in Varanasi. Junhi Han.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizer, the teamworks and Avid Learning, and particular Sanjoy and Assad for inviting UNESCO New Delhi to join this important, very, very important gathering for the India's cultural and then creative sectors. Today my talk will be while waiting for the power presentation. Maybe I can briefly share with you my thought, how can be my presentation. First of all, I will share with you what was the outcome of the G20 Culture Working Group. As you know, G20 in general, they do not make actionable, actionable decision. But it is very important for them to reaffirm and reaffirm various basic principles related to this creative sector. As you know, then after that, I will share with you very shortly what is the UNESCO's 2005 Convention on Protection and Promotion of the expression of the diversity of cultural expression, which directly concerns the cultural and the creative sectors. And as well as then maybe very briefly, the UNESCO 1980 the recommendation concerning status of the artist. For your information, Sanjay knows very well. By the time now he became also expert in this. UNESCO was the first international agency which paid attention to very particular nature of work of artists. Therefore, in cooperation with ILO in 1980, UNESCO established a recommendation for improving status of artists. And then after 1980, now it's more than 40 years, this recommendation still remains very much unknown, and the status of artists remain very much fragile, as you know, which was also demonstrated through the COVID period. After that, of course, before this meeting with Assad and Sanjay, we had a short chat how we want to move forward. And at the time, we agreed that it would be wonderful if we can come out a few set of recommendations for India's creative sector. Because the G20, of course, was not a place to address particular issues of India's cultural and creative industries, but it was very important that G20 touched upon common issues for all, not G20 but across the globe. So, and then, Sanjay, I had no occasion to contact you when I came back from Varanasi, and then, with my ankle, whatever, but I had a short chat also with Lily, and then I shared our plan that we would like to make a recommendation and then submit it to Ministry of Culture for their consideration. So she suggested that why don't we come out with a similar meetings, then to present, not only just submit to the Ministry of Culture our recommendation, but to present. And then, of course, I think that would be much more efficient because, present, all your stakeholders, direct stakeholders of India's creative, cultural and creative sectors can present what are the recommendations and why, because why is very important. So these are the things I thought that I could share with you. This is okay, Sanjay? So I already made the first slide, while waiting. So these were the thoughts that I thought it would be important for UNESCO New Delhi to share with all of you. I will not read through. You all know that what were the before that, maybe I can make a very quick introduction about the G20 Culture Working Group. As you know, G20 was mainly set up for finance issues or other very important and crucial issues for the globe, like climate change and then etc. But in 2020, when the Saudi Arabia held the presidency, they incorporated a forum of cultural ministers within the G20. So that was the first time that Ministers of Cultures of G20 gathered together to, of course, then since they were Ministers of Cultures, although it was within G20 without culture tracker, they discussed a range of important issues common to G20 countries. Italy took over in 2021 presidency of G20, and it was first time that they incorporated proper culture working group under the Sherpa track of G20. So that was first time the G20 held officially the culture working group, and at the time UNESCO was invited to associate and then by organizing various webinars, because 21, we all remember it was very hard time and which hit seriously the creative sectors. And 22 was Indonesia presidency, and then India presidency finally. So it is the third time that the culture was incorporated into the G20 as a proper working group. India set up 4 priorities under the G20 culture working group India presidency. You see, those were the 4 priorities, and then our area, the area which concerns us particularly, is the priority number 3, as you know. But the living heritage and then of course digital platforms are very, very closely linked to priority 3, because we have already the sector has transformed a lot into digital platform. It is very important also for me to highlight that these priorities were not just out of the blue, suddenly it was formulated, but they were already very much strongly recommended by the declaration which was made by the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development, which was held last year in September in Mexico City, which we often call Vodiapult, because the first World Conference on Cultural Policies took place in 1982. So it was in 40 years after. But I would like to mention about this first World Conference on Cultural Policy, because this was really landmark declaration. It defined the definition of cultural heritage, which are still used by us today. So it was the first time that we used the word of intangible cultural heritage, which we know now we call the living heritage, intangible heritage. Before 82 World Conference, we all called folk art, traditional art. There was no this terminology. So this the 82 World Conference on Cultural Policy formulated this term, intangible cultural heritage. So it was the first time intangible cultural heritage, the wording used versus tangible cultural heritage. I mean, just and then of course this I will not go through. So you see, this was the evening after the G20 Culture Minister Forum, 26 in Varanasi. The day I was sprinkled my ankle. And of course you will see the two state ministers here. And so we called the outcome document. It is not a declaration. There was a few differences. So the outcome document of India presidency, it is written Kashi Cultural Pathways. It summarizes the comments and the consensus arrived by the G20 culture ministers of the priorities articulated by the G20 Culture Working Group. So I will not go through the text of the other priorities, because I don't think we have lots of time for it. But I will just go through very quickly others, because this outcome document, I can also share with you separately the outcome document. I mean, I can leave it to Assad, and Assad team maybe share with those who are interested in. The outcome document is composed of starting with the guiding principles, and then after it follows call for actions. So these are from the guiding principles. So for these cultural and creative industries, we have the 5 guiding principles. So first of all, we have to acknowledge that these cultural and creative industries contribute greatly to GDP. So I will not go through, but I highlighted a bit the key part, because it's a long text. So further recognizing, and of course finally we also come to the point highlighting again and again the fragile working condition of artists. And then also we also mention women and youth. So there are also 2 overarching themes for a call for action. And of course here it talks about the classification, and then also the institutional cooperation, and then we affirm the commitment to support. As you know, the G20 countries are leading countries of the globe, and although of course in various platforms, including UNESCO's, where we have almost 190 member states, meaning that 190 members, so we have already this kind of the basic principles approved, but for the globe, I think it is very important for the leading countries affirm and reaffirm the importance of these basic principles. So I think that is also very important, that text repeatedly and continuously we support, we affirm and reaffirm Since the text is quite long, I thought that I found out one of the issue note, this expected outcome and discussion part, summarizes very well the nature and then items of the discussion. As you see, the first item is the definition of a creative economy and methodology for estimating its contribution. Sanjoy, we always keep talking about lack of data. It's because the major sector makes it very difficult to quantify the contribution we do to the global GDP or national GDP. How you can quantify, for example, the economic value of, let's say, some festivals. From just since I just come from Varanasi, Ganga Arati, for example. It is very important, very difficult. So, and it has been these issues that remain one of the hurdles in this sector. And global report, UNESCO global report, which I will talk about a bit later. The last year, first time, it came out with clear data that this creative sector contributed to 3.1% of the global GDP. But it is very important to highlight that this 3.1 is only official figures, and as you all know, especially in India, many events, many areas are unofficial and not. It's impossible to be taken as a data. So if you take into account all these the factors which have not been taken into account, you can imagine how much it can go up. So, and then secondly, the second is the data collection, and then of course third one, as I already mentioned, status of cultural practitioners, largely artists. This directly related to the UNESCO's recommendation from 1980s concerning status of artists. And then of course later on, it goes on, of course, it calls for further collaboration between the countries and the further exchange between the countries, and then of course the further collaboration and exchange very important for such data collection, etc. So I took this expected outcome because I thought it summarized well the discussion. Why? Because the outcome document is very much partition document. So I will now share with you what is the UNESCO's 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expression. It is an international legal agreement. It was designed and established in order to support the creative economy, actually the creative sectors, and then meaning that the artists, and then of course all the cultural goods, and then all other items related. So you will see here. So you see here and then of course this is only international instrument ratified by the European Union in this area. So so this comes from the global report which I just mentioned. The last year's the global report, UNESCO actually compiles quadrennial report, meaning that every 4 years we receive report from all our member states, and then compile, then analyze the trend, and then of course if there is any practice which we would like to highlight, it goes also into the report. And the last year's report, also you may have already noticed, recently has been largely quoted by many international players, because it came out with a clear figures, it contributes the creative sector globally. It contributes 3.1% of global GDP and 6.2% of all employment. And then there is also other very important aspect. For example, tax on artists has been rising. I think this is really alarming. And also only 1.23% of development aid was spent on culture, for example. So this report has a lot to offer. So I will just finish my talk with this video.
Imagine life without art, a world without creative expression, the things that color our reality and give it meaning, gone. Working to keep culture and creativity alive, UNESCO's 2022 Global Report, Reshaping Policies for Creativity, monitors the world's progress in implementing the 4 goals of the 2005 Convention, an international framework that protects and promotes diversity while also addressing the challenges developing countries face. Governance for Culture highlights the importance of policies and measures to protect and support cultural and creative sectors, just as other sectors are protected and supported. Culture and creativity make up 3.1% of our global GDP and 6.2% of all jobs, not to mention the enormous value they create in building culturally rich and cohesive communities. And yet, public funding for these sectors has declined over the past decade. It's still not easy for people to make a stable career in culture or creativity. And the sectors were especially hard hit during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite this, demand for creativity is growing, with online consumption soaring. But current business models don't pay creators enough, nor do they promote diverse content or adequately protect the use of online copyrights. Uneven access to the connected world is also deepening inequalities in cultural and creative sectors. By improving collaboration between governments, civil society organizations, and creative businesses, we can address the disconnect between the artistic works we love, the opportunities we get to see them, and the well-being of those who create them. Our rich cultural diversity should be preserved and celebrated across our world as the common heritage of our humanity and any imbalances addressed. That's why we need to ensure a fairer flow of cultural goods and services across the world and increase mobility for artists. More artists, works and ideas need to travel to other countries, reaching the largest audiences possible. When public funding is limited, NGOs and other associations can help, but opportunities remain uneven. Funding and visa barriers make it harder for artists from developing countries to travel. And currently, most artist residencies are in Europe and North America. Access to global markets is just as uneven. While the export of cultural goods and services doubled in value between 2016 and 2019, 95% of total creative exports in cultural services still come from developed countries, and they receive 70% of all foreign direct investment. To address these inequalities, developed countries need to broaden trade opportunities for developing countries, offering advantages to them without requiring reciprocity. As no country can address rising global inequalities on its own, international cooperation is needed and is key to including culture in sustainable development. But international cooperation funding is going down. While the enormous value of culture in sustainable developing planning is increasingly being recognized. However, the value of cultural and creative industries specifically is still largely ignored, and their potential remains untapped. A single artist's work can impact the lives of millions, changing minds and behaviors. Yet, the contribution artists are making in critical areas such as climate action and environmental sustainability is largely overlooked. We need to make it grow. we must also protect freedom of expression and creativity for artists, and the rights of artists. While more countries are taking steps to improve economic conditions of artists, they are still far from enjoying the same rights as other workers. Violations of artistic freedom are also rising, and almost half of all countries lack independent bodies to monitor these harms. And though culture and entertainment is among the sectors with the highest employment of women, gender equality remains out of reach. In many countries, women are still being left out of leadership roles, and there is little support for change. So, how do we move forward from here? Supporting the cultural and creative sectors is important for all of us. Creativity inspires and helps us navigate life in all its complexity, at all ages. Creative minds are also key to solving the challenges of our world. We need to create better conditions for artists and cultural professionals and ensure adequate policies are in place so that culture can realize its full potential as a global public good benefiting all. And we need to act now as the world recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's start shaping tomorrow's priorities with our diversity of creative voices for a more sustainable future, leaving no one behind.
Let me now extend a warm welcome to the past president of FICCI, chairperson of the FICCI Tourism Committee and the CMD of Lalit Suri Hospitality Group, Dr. Jyotsna Suri, as she takes the stage for her keynote address on tourism as a catalyst in empowering creative economics. Please welcome Dr. Suri.
Namaskar to all of you, Sadna, Sanjoy, Madhuji, Asad. Thank you so much for inviting me here, and a warm welcome to all of you wonderful people sitting here in the audience. We're talking about culture and what culture can do as a contribution to GDP. And here at FICCI, as was introduced by Sanjoy as well, where he said that we amalgamated tourism and culture, because we firmly believe that in tourism and culture are intertwined. And while Sanjay was doing a great job independently, trying very hard to get his voice heard, we put it all together, and thereafter which we are now, as a joint committee, done a lot of work, I have to say, particularly during COVID, when things were really bad, and both tourism and the creative industry, we don't call it just culture, we call it the creative industry, because all of the people who are involved in the creative industry have to live. They have to have a sustainable income for them to be able to survive. And as we've seen some really lovely numbers about the contribution to GDP, as well as employment, but a lot of it is unorganized. So there's probably way more than we actually get to hear. So we worked very hard, and we did do what we could. But having said that, of course, COVID took its toll on all of us, but we did have a fairly decent recovery, and tourism picked up. But what we were talking about, or what I am going to talk to you about, is how tourism and culture can be a powerful source for economy and social value. And I have to say that tourism and culture definitely is a very, very powerful source to create economic and social value. It supports businesses, boosts investment, and most importantly, it creates employment. And this is what our country needs right now, because we have this young demographic sitting, waiting to be able to get suitably employed. And in the tourism sector, we actually employ from the very basic to the CEO of the company. You don't have to be a Harvard student to be able to come and join our industry. And we also, most chains do, we at the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group also do that, is that we skill our people and give them the basic skills and then allow them to become part of our industry. In fact, we've gone a little bit beyond that, and we are now working with deeply marginalized communities. I'm really proud to share with you that we have the largest number of transgenders working for us. I mean, these people really need to be part of all of us, and they shouldn't be any patronizing attitudes to them. We also have a huge number of differently abled people working for us. And these are all skilled by us, trained by us, and then brought up. A lot of them are coming up to the front. In fact, the pianists in most of our hotels have some challenge or the other, and they play beautifully. So, coming back to the power is actually, it's a soft power, but it's a strong economic power as well. We saw some numbers about the creative industry, but I just want to dovetail it all together and say that in India, tourism actually provides 10 to 12% of employment. And it is contributing currently 9% to the GDP. But this 9% can easily go up to 10 or 12%. As we have heard from Sanjoy, where he introduced what India is all about. I mean, you name it, we have it. Whether it's the beaches, or whether it's the mountains, or whether it's archaeology, or adventure tourism, and religious, of course, that's very, very important. Or we have anything and everything that you can think of that will satisfy a tourist's yearning. And again, as he did point out, that if it wasn't for that yearning to travel, we would never have stepped out of Africa in the very first place. So this travel has to happen. Yes, it's a little bit difficult nowadays with all the visas, as we did point out, but the fact is that when a traveler wants to go somewhere, nothing stops him, and he gets there. Despite it might be a long drive or it might be a tiresome journey, but if he wants to do something, he does. Coming to FICCI and how we have actually worked to try and promote tourism. To be honest, I think this government has actually put a lot of focus on tourism. And our Prime Minister doesn't spare a single podium or a platform where he does not mention the power and the importance of tourism in our country. We, of course, at FICCI have been working tirelessly on that. In 2008, it was when we set up what we call the G20, the Great Indian Travel Bazaar. And I just want to share with you that, since then, since the time we set it up, we've done 12 editions. We've had, let me read that out for you. We've had about 1.5 lakh B2B meetings. We've had more than 60 countries participating with us, and we've had more than, we just have one coming up now in May, and as I said, more than 60 plus countries have actually participated in this. So what does this do? We bring in a lot of foreign buyers. But it's not just about the foreign tourists. As was pointed out earlier, we get about maybe 8 to 10 million people coming in to India. We send out regularly more than 27 million. So the inbound the foreign tourist arrival is very, very minuscule. A lot of it is returning, expats coming home or people coming to visit. So what kept us alive? I have to share that with you, that it was the domestic movement that actually kept us alive. And this domestic movement, I mentioned about 27 plus million people going out. None of those guys could travel because there was restrictions on visas. So these people, along with, of course, others, really traveled within the country. And I'm so happy that happened, because a lot of them, in fact, I would say most of them, did not know their country. And that's really sad. So when the culture element comes in, for India, as you move from state to state, it's different. What is happening in the north is completely different from the south, or the east or the west. So it's a learning experience for all of us, and it's something that we all should be happy to do. And that's what the pandemic did to us, whereby we got our own people to travel within the country. The power of creative industry and tourism is here to stay, and it's platforms like this. Thank you very much, Madhuji, for doing this. We also have a lovely event in Bangalore, thank you Sadhna for that, where we bring forward all these elements. Because when a tourist travels, he's not going to visit a mall, please understand that. We've got plenty of malls wherever he is. He wants to, whether it's a domestic movement or an international movement, he wants to know what is the local culture like. How do people live here? What do they eat? How do they entertain themselves? What is their dance form? What is their cuisine? So that is what needs to come together. That's why we feel that culture and tourism so much intertwined with each other. So I want to conclude by saying once again, thank you so much for having me here. We will talk a little bit more when we get on to the next session. But thank you so much for putting this platform together. Thank you so much, and namaskar to all of you.